independent art to preparing for and navigating an art fair. We're going to get started in a moment, so just hang tight. We're just going to give folks a few more minutes to join us and we'll get started. All right. Hello, everyone. It is 12:03, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Sapira Chirk. I am the Artist Service Specialist with the Nevada Arts Council, and we're very, very excited to share this webinar with you today. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to type them into the Q&A. And we'll be able to address those questions at the end. And if you feel more comfortable at the end, if you want to raise your hand, I can unmute you at the end to answer your questions. So if you don't want to forget them, you can type them in as you go. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Briana Dolan. Briana Dolan is the co-founder and COO of Peaks Art Fair, which include the Reno Tahoe International Art Show, established in 2022, and Salt Lake Art Show, launching 2026. Prior to moving to Reno in 2020, she and her family lived in New York City and Connecticut, where she was the marketing executive for renowned hospitality design firm Tihany Design. She partnered with her father, Kevin O'Keefe, in 2020 to develop the Reno Fine Arts Collective online and physical pop-up gallery, which served as a testing ground for what was to follow with the launch of the RTIA Show. After 3 successful additions to the fair, each doubling in size from the previous show, Kevin and Briana will bring the inclusive, unique to location fine art fair model to Salt Lake City in May 2026. The Reno-based artist is mother to 4 underage and balances artist coordination with home preschool and family adventure. Welcome, Briana. We're really, really excited to have you. Please take it away.
Thanks, Vera. I appreciate it. And what a great intro. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my first ever webinar. I'm very grateful to the Nevada Arts Council for the opportunity to present today. This is To the Fair, an independent artist guide to preparing for and navigating an art fair. Part 1, to go or not to go. This will be a very casual conversation, lecture, and I'll let Spira interrupt me with questions or comments really at any time. If something comes up, we can address it. I'm flexible. While the subject of the art fair is one that I've become quite familiar with in recent years, it's a pretty broad topic and one that can be intimidating to artists that are new to the scene or less familiar with the fair environment. Having attended many fairs across the country and abroad, and now having organized and produced several here in Reno, I can certainly speak to the subject, but my perspective is from an artist standpoint and an event organizer. So in other words, I'm not claiming to be an expert here. I'm going to weave in only a little history before we get going. Art fairs have been around for forever, specifically since the 5th century. So, and then even with more sophisticated contemporary fairs, well known and recorded from the 12th century. There's an enormous well of history when it comes to artists and artisans coming together to present and sell their creations. And the modern art fair is really no different. Art dealers appeared in the 16th century, and I think we can credit the Parisian salons as the original source of elitism in the art world. Not much has changed over the centuries, but the bottom line here is that large-scale exhibitions of art and ideas are an essential part of the human progress, connection, and understanding. And so we begin, to the fair. For part 1 of this conversation, I really just wanted to dive into the decision-making process for artists. So we'll talk about what is an art fair, why the heck would you do one, and what to consider when you're making your decision. Once you do mentally commit, then what to expect and how to start setting your intentions for the experience. Now, what is an art fair and how is it different from other art events? The definition of an art fair is a commercial trade show where galleries, collectives, and independent artists exhibit art to the public over the course of multiple days. Fairs are primarily commercial, focused on sales and connecting exhibitors to collectors and art enthusiasts. While many art events are presented as a market environment and fit that definition that we just talked about, an art fair is its own beast. It's not an outdoor tent event. It's not a festival. It's also not a museum exhibition, which is typically a quiet solo experience. The contemporary art fair is a true trade show where presentation and communication, both visual and verbal, is really everything. Now, this is a new slide I added in this morning, just for fun. Back to history for a minute. Art fairs have always been a means for change and exchange. Beyond sharing new ideas, the events themselves were actually always positioned in rising markets, not necessarily already arts and cultural hubs. From the 1960s on, art fairs were primarily developed in second cities or locations looking to develop or bring visibility to their markets. Art Basel is a really great example of this. It was established in 1970 in Basel, Switzerland, which is certainly not a high-density art hub. And then when it opened in Miami in 2002, same idea, except that that particular opening was the catalyst for an explosion of new art fairs, all trying to one-up each other in mostly a gallery hierarchy. Now, why do longstanding fairs cater to galleries and dealers? For one, it's easier to have everyone on the same playing field. Artists introduce direct competition, obviously, because galleries have to share the compensation for any art sold with artists. When artists are presenting in a exhibition environment, it's a different energy and presentation, and not necessarily in conflict with what galleries and dealers are doing, but it's just different. So longstanding art fairs have the same galleries that present and participate every year. They usually do the same circuit of art fairs, and it's kind of static in that way. However, or it was kind of static. COVID, as we all know, put pause to all of that, and everyone learned very quickly that virtual exhibitions just don't hold a candle to in-person art fairs. As events eventually got going again, the art world was shaken up. And as we continue to forge ahead post-pandemic, art fairs are redefining themselves. Not all of them, but some of the peripheral and new art fairs are redefining themselves by various degrees, and as a result are creating new opportunities for artists rather than strictly galleries and dealers. I bring this up especially after that last slide because events like the festivals and craft fairs were at one time really the only comfortable place for many independent artists to exhibit their work. And they're still very comfortable for independent artists, but the fair is a different animal, and it offers a new opportunity to consider in showing your work. So why do one? Whether a mid-level or established artist are just making the transition into professional fine art, exhibiting at an art fair might seem intimidating. In fact, I just read a quote this morning that was really funny. It was describing before COVID what it was like for an independent artist to present at an art fair, and it was like a teenager walking in on their parents. So it's like the people feel uncomfortable. They don't belong. Artists need, in a way, I want to be able through this presentation to convince independent artists that an art fair is a place that they belong. And it just comes down to considering presentation. So before that, why would you consider doing it? One, exposure to a new audience. Lots of different people attend art fairs, generally speaking. Fairs are usually paid entry for visitors, so the people who buy tickets typically want to be there and are interested in looking at and engaging with your art. The personal experience is huge. The art fair experience is an opportunity to practice with your personal brand, how you communicate visually, verbally, and your general presence in public with your art. Solo artists generally don't want to think about their work as a brand. But in a trade show setting, which is an art fair, you have to think like a dealer. Experiencing how that works or doesn't work with different kinds of people is truly invaluable information for an artist, regardless of their level. The opportunity for sales is obvious, but it really can never be the sole reason for doing an art fair, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. And finally, connection to the art world. This includes other artists, of course, dealers, collectors, consultants, other professionals within the wider design and architecture community, and so on. Not to mention the opportunity just to see what other artists and galleries are showing at that particular time. What's the downside? So if you're thinking all these things are sounding pretty good, what's the downside, and is there one? For one, art fairs are a ton of work. There's just no way around that. Preparing your art and your display, getting there, the long days with lots of interaction and activity, especially for introverted people like myself, it's a lot of mental activity, and you never know if you're going to sell anything. So if these things aren't stopping your curiosity, let's just jump into the major things to consider when you're deciding to proceed with participation in an art fair. There's a few different columns of thought where we need to just kind of dive into based on the fair that you're considering and your time that's going to be put into that. So one, what kind of fair is it? Who is attending the fair? What is the commitment for you personally? And then how are you creating a personal intention for that experience? I think that last one is frequently overlooked because you get so wrapped up in the preparation for the participation part that you finally get there and it's kind of a frazzle of activity. But if you prepare mentally for the experience of exhibiting your work, it really can be a game changer. So first, what kind of fair is it? What's the vibe? So every art fair has its own particular branding, targeted participants and audience, and on-site environment. There's a few things to think about and decide if they resonate with you and your own brand. So one, who is exhibiting at whatever art fair you're considering participating in? Is it only independent artists? Is it just galleries with a few independent artists that are invited, or is it a pretty healthy mix of both? That combination or not a combination of types of exhibitors does impact the experience of the event, because it's just different energy, different kinds of conversations, different kinds of mix of art being presented. So if it's all independents, it could be a super high energy event, and you can make great connections and learn from other artists who might be in the same boat as you or ahead of you or whatever, doing different things. But the mixed fair gives you more of a variety, and it also is different for the audience, because as they're coming in, they themselves are trying to get a handle on who is it that I'm approaching. Are they an independent artist? Is it a gallery with many different kinds of artists that they're presenting, or only a few artists? And it's just a little bit more dynamic in that way, because everyone's taking it all in at that moment. And artists don't have to present themselves in a way that they're trying to match what's being done by galleries, but they're just their own exhibition. So that's something to be considered for sure. And how strict is the acceptance? So if it's one of these affairs that it has very few independent artists, what's that application like? What's it going to mean for you once you get in, if you do get in? And then what's the layout? Because obviously every building is different, every layout is different. If the fair has been around for a long time, they might use the same floor plan every year and simply just fill it in with exhibitors for that year. Some, like the RTIA Show, we won't release our plan until maybe a month or two ahead of the event, just because the floor plan is being created as exhibitors come in. There's a basic outline, but it kind of changes. And what matters most really is how is the traffic flowing through? Where are they being directed to? Are there other things going on at the show that would be pulling them in different directions? So who's coming to this event? Who's being drawn in? Is the branding targeting a younger audience, new collectors, seasoned buyers, professionals within the design community? Is it a spectacle event where it's really just for art appreciators? Is it family friendly? A lot of times new exhibitors will be off put by photos of kids next to the art. But I think it's extremely important to remember that people with kids also buy art. So that's an overlooked fact, but I think that it does make a difference. And if there's activities for families that will draw that audience in, that's a bonus. Location. Is the location defined by a certain kind of audience and interest? Is that going to be restrictive of the kind of art that you're trying to present? That seems like an obvious thought, but it maybe is not as you're preparing to dive into this. Atmosphere. Does the general audience feel welcome? Do you want the general audience there? Is it loud? Is it bright? What's the entertainment like? Usually you can get a sense of the atmosphere by photos or videos of previous events or asking former exhibitors. So that kind of pre-research into the fair is important because you want to have an idea of what you're getting yourself into. And also, you want to know if it's going to be fun. I mean, you're about to spend several days in the same building, surrounded by the same people, exhibiting, I mean. And you want to know that you're going to be able to enjoy yourself. So that kind of pre-research is essential. And then, is there other entertainment besides the art? Because the typical fair, where it's galleries only, is very structured, and there's not a lot of outside music or other kinds of art being shown because the focus is on the exhibiting parties. So that's a bonus for that kind of environment. But if people and different kinds of collectors are the focus, you want to be able to enlist in an art fair that has more going on than just the walls and lights and art. Here, I just wanted to include a few examples of art fairs because every art fair is very different from each other. And some of these are longstanding. Obviously, Art Basel, Miami has its own thing. It's really the pinnacle of a gallery art fair. Superfine is a independent artist only. It very much targets a younger audience. Affordable Art Fair is gallery only for the most part, but there's a ceiling of I think it's like $10,000 or $15,000 for each piece of art cannot exceed a certain dollar amount. And so that alone creates a different environment. So there's different branding. And then TFAFT at the bottom left there is antiques and contemporary works, but it's just very high end. So every fair has its own vibe, and it's important to understand exactly what to expect before you even apply. Okay, so here we go. This is an important one. What's the commitment? What's it going to cost you? So the actual cost, booth cost. What's included with the booth? Is it just the walls and lights? Are there commission fees? How far is it? What's the cost of travel, accommodation? And then additional costs that are important to think about is, what is your setup going to require? Are you going to need extra lights? Are you bringing your own furniture, booth decor, branding materials you might need to print or prepare? These are things to think about and calculate from the beginning, so that you don't begin to convince yourself that you need to make X dollars at the show to make up for all these added costs you didn't expect. Time. How many days is it? What are the open hours? How early do you need to arrive to set up? Typically, 2D art and things that you can hang pretty easily on a wall, you can do it the day of. opening. So we at RTIA, we open up 2D artists can come. We open the show Thursday evening, and so we allow all day Thursday from that morning, and then all from the afternoon on Wednesday as well. But some artists will come, and our galleries will come, and they'll set up. It could take a couple hours before the show starts, and that way you can prepare in advance accommodation and so forth. If you're trying to paint your walls, that's a different story, and you need to make sure you allow time to have the walls painted and dried so you can hang things, paint or wall coverings or any additional setup time required is more time, obviously, for yourself, but also for if you're staying somewhere, and all of these things need to be considered. Do you need help to move in, to hang the art? Are you enlisting family members or friends, or do you need to ask on-site staff to help you to install or to move things out of cars or whatever? Again, all things to think about. And then how long is breakdown? Typically, and this is, I think, across the board, you cannot leave early. So no exhibitor can take art off the walls during an art fair, or even like an hour before it closes, because it's very bad manners, and it's you can't be suggesting that the event is coming to a close. So you need to understand just how long you are on duty, and then when is the breakdown starting? Is it that night or the next morning perhaps? And how many days do you have? Another thing to think about is beyond setup, would you consider having an assistant come with you to help man the booths? You can switch off, take breaks. If you are introverted and need mental breaks, it helps a lot to be able to walk away for a couple hours and come back. Now most fairs will offer the opportunity for booth sitters, but that's typically like 20 to 30 minutes, maybe an hour at most. And that person that's sitting there is not familiar with your work. So that's not necessarily a time where you're going to have this great salesman come in and do your job for you. Having an assistant or someone who's familiar with your work or your person and your story, it helps a lot in the preparation. Do you have enough art to curate this space? Inventory is big because you want to be able to fill the walls that you've reserved, but you also want to have a backstock of art because it helps a lot. First, to replace art that's been sold, that's a must, so that the walls are never blank. And you can have red dots on there or any other a symbol to indicate that something's not available for sale. But it also helps during the show, perhaps in the few minutes before opening on some of the days, to kind of rearrange the work, especially if you have people, attendees who have purchased a multiple day pass. Well, they will come back. They'll come one day by themselves. The next day they'll bring their family. The next day they'll bring clients if it's a professional, architect or designer or something like that. And people who are walking the show again and again and noticing new things, that's just more opportunity to draw them in. So rearranging or just, taking something down, putting and replacing it just to create a new energy within your space is definitely a good thing to consider. So having that backstock and ideas of how to rearrange is important. And most fairs will either have the storage space close by within the booth configuration space, or within a storage room nearby. So every exhibitor has access to that kind of space to store things. Now, finding your why is huge. This is the intention that I was talking about earlier. So find your why and you'll find your way. This is like there's many ways to say this, but I think it's just being able to it's like your artist statement, being able to describe yourself at the core of what your brand is, or who you are as a person, and how that reflects into your art and what you're making. Always come back to that, because if you're struggling with the branding element of this, how to present yourself as a brand rather than, or at the same time, a brand and a person that's presenting their art. If you come back with one or two, even three core elements of why you're doing what you're doing, that you can keep speaking to in different ways, and explaining things to people, and it will make things a lot easier as far as the mental preparation. So also setting intentions. You need to be able to control your expectations of what's going to be your experience at the fair. I think a lot of people make the mistake of, first-time exhibitors make the mistake of expecting sales, for one, expected to come in and just blow through their inventory, expecting people to make a beeline to their booth, and just engage them right away. You have to think like you would if you were an attendee to the fair, and you're coming in to look for art that you know what you want, or you want to buy something, you don't know what it's going to be, or you're just checking it out. If you're thinking about the experience as an attendee, the trick is not to put on a salesperson face. You're there to represent the art, and that's it. You're there to represent the art and your brand, and you're visually telling your own story as an artist. You're verbally communicating that visual story. How are you going to communicate with passerbys? You have to be prepared to allow people to come into your bubble space of the booth, ask the questions they might want to ask, and if it feels stale, or like you're having a hard time with the initial outreach, sometimes it's as easy as saying, "I'm so and so, I'm the artist, and this is my work. If you have any questions, let me know." And then that's it. You're just there. You're just you're facilitating the experience between the attendee and your art. And of course, you want to be able to come in with an open mindset, where you're forming connections with everyone and anyone. It's not just potential buyers. It's your neighboring exhibitors. It's exhibitors across the hall. It's people who you would never expect would be buyers, or would be interested in art at all, and sometimes it's the most unexpected conversations that are the most beneficial. So coming in with that mindset is everything. And then just to also think about how to leave a lasting impression on buyers and potential buyers, again, about that communication of your brand. So people are going to remember your work, and they're going to remember their experience with you. So do you want to give them something to maybe think about that, or do you want to say something to them as they're leaving? All these things are part of this mental preparation. So if you've taken the leap and you're going to do the fair, some things to start thinking about what to expect. Now we're going to get into a whole bunch of stuff in part 2 about preparing your space and what the exhibition process is really like. But this is still preliminary. Tiers of expectations. So you've made the final decision, and you're going to commit to the art fair. There should be the tiers of expectation of what you're going to gain from this experience, and how you should approach that. One, the experience of showing your art and talking about it to different kinds of people and hearing in-person feedback. That's the number one gain from being an independent artist in an art fair, whether it's your first time or 50th. 2, forming connections to other artists, gallerists, collectors, buyers, etc. That's the meat of it. That comes right after the experience. And then last is selling the art, because you have the mentality that you're there to make up the cost of the experience in sales, you've already wasted your time and your money. Don't do it if that's your mentality, because it's not worth it. Obviously, you want to sell things, but that's the end game. It just doesn't happen just because. So that's the tiers of expectation I think it's important to put out there. So next, in part 2, we're calling it a curating your experience, and that's really about how you're going to take your artist statement and your intentions, your why, and put that into a brand and prepare through visually, obviously, and then how to practice going back to those things verbally when people are asking you questions about your art, your process, your intentions, and curating your presentation, which is huge in an art fair. You really want to be able to draw people in without being obnoxious, without matching your neighbors. You want to create a welcome experience. So a lot of times that comes with simple add-ons, like having a comfortable chair or 2 chairs so that someone could sit with you, having a table that suggests more of a living space rather than a business circumstance. Some people will add area rugs or lamps. None of that is necessary, but it has to be able to reflect how you want to be seen. It comes back to your brand and your presentation. What to bring, logistics, things to think about: electricity, computers, what to actually put in your car or your suitcase when you're coming, and then maximizing your time while you're there. Looking at the schedule of the fair, looking at your fellow exhibitors, anticipating who's coming, and how to make the most of the experience. So that will be part 2, and we'll kind of round back on some of the topics that were covered in today's presentation, just about each particular art fair and what could be different from fair to fair. More logistical stuff though, so that's where we're going to pick up. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and happy to answer any questions or take any comments at this time.
If you have any questions, you can either chat it into the Q&A or go ahead and use the raise hand function, and I'll be able to allow you to talk. And if, oh, here we go. I'm going to allow you to talk, Jay. Okay. Go
Hi,
ahead.
you guys. Thank you so much. Briana, this is so clear that there's actually not a lot of questions, and I'm just really impressed with the information that you're sharing. So thank you very much. I look forward to the second part too.
I appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
And I did send a link to register for part 2. You can click on the Zoom registration so we can get you into that webinar. All right, I see a question in the Q&A. Laura says, your experience with getting an ARC grant to help defray costs. I think we can answer that for you, Laura. If you are a Nevada resident for the past year, you can apply for the project grant for artists, and we will help. So one of the things that this grant help with is to pay for registration fees or materials or transportation to things like art fair to show your work. Unfortunately, the grant period for that would align with the RTIA has lapsed. So if you are planning to do it next year, you would have to look at when the fair is going to be when the fair is held and when our grant cycle aligns with that period, if that makes sense. I'm happy to talk with you more about it because our grant is very specific. But Briana, do you have any other anything to add to that question?
Kind of. I think that if there's ever any like major impediments to exhibiting, well, especially in our case, it's just my dad and I are the managers. So if there's if there's an exhibitor that is dying to get in there and can't manage it, just write to us. Let's try to figure out a way to make it work, because a lot of times we do have featured spaces, and some other fairs do this too, where it's featured space that is flexible, and it might be more restrictive in what you can show or who can be in there, but a lot of times there's opportunities that aren't necessarily broadcast, so it's worth communicating with managers of the fair, just to see what the options are, most definitely.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. I don't see any hands. I have a question. Briana, what are some of the like highlights? Like, what are some of the big wins you saw artists took away from attending the fair?
I think that every year has had a similar feedback in that sense, where people or exhibitors, especially new exhibitors that haven't done it in the past, or maybe had exhibited their work in other kinds of environments, their first time doing a fair, coming away at such a high, not necessarily because they've sold things, but because of the experience, because they were able to come out there, show the work. They had some people that were very thoughtfully, attendees and other artists or gallerists, thoughtfully contributing or sharing what their thoughts are about their work and about how they presented, and also artists that were recognized not just by individuals, but by let's say they received an award for great presentation on site at the show. That kind of boost, and just knowing that you were there, that you belonged there. And I think that's really what it comes down to, and why I wanted to focus so much material in the decision-making process, because so much of it is like, do I belong there? I mean, as an artist, am I going to fit in? Is my work good enough? Can I stand there and talk about it for days on end? And if other artists come and talk to me, am I going to be able to hold my own? And especially new artists, I think, struggle, or artists that have just taken the leap into professional fine art struggle with that confidence. And an experience like this can be a huge boost to that. And it's not just reliant on sales. And I think that is what I really want to drive home, because the experience is huge. And you meet so many great people. And we started the show in 2022, and I know artists and artists who were picked up by galleries that are still in those galleries, or artists that have met each other on site that have collaborated since on new art. And it's just that kind of outcome is some of my favorite to hear about, at least afterwards.
That's great. Thank you. I see another Q&A. John asks, what is your take on the current social economical climate and its impact on art fairs and sales?
Oh my gosh, it's a new day every day, as we know, as we're living it. It's really tricky, because it's really up and down. And I think that some fairs abroad recently have struggled, that have taken place in the last few months, just because of the climate in the world. But I think that there's also, whenever there's a shakeup in the economy, there's also a great desire for connection and for stability. And whether that's just getting people into the building or having them keep their tradition of buying art at certain times of the year, or collectors, people with money, collectors will keep collecting, and nothing's going to shake that up. Projects that are ongoing, hospitality projects, high-end residential projects, nothing's going to stop them from purchasing or commissioning art, because the project must go on. So I think that while there's a lot of uncertainty, there's still quite a bit of certainty in some of the things that will happen. Events, purchases, and we're proceeding in Salt Lake, and everyone there is quite excited about bringing another art fair to that market in May of next year. And and we're quite excited to see how things shake up. But everyone just hold on to their hats, because I think there's going to be a lot of change still to come.
For sure. All right, thank you. I see Stefan has his hand up. Stefan, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah. Hey, Briana, thanks so much. The presentation was great. I was, every year that I go, I'm really taken back by the breadth. I think we talked about this a little bit.
Stefan, I'm sorry, you're really low volume. Can you move the mic closer to your mouth?
How's that? Is that a little better? Or... No?
Kind of.
How's that? Is that any better? No? Maybe.
No, it's okay. We can hear you.
Okay, so I'm sorry, yeah. But the breadth of the art fair, of what you have there, the Burning Man stuff, the gallery stuff, artists from out of state, artists in state. Over the last 3 or 4 years, have you kind of rethought that at all, of what you or who you want to invite, or just how that has evolved, or maybe how that's changed your thinking maybe of the fair? I'm just kind of curious, because I kind of love the eclectic nature of it and all the things that are there, but I'm just kind of curious about maybe some of the feedback or some of the input that you've got about how that's comprised and put together.
No, that's a great question. I think from the beginning, and given our timing, launching the show, it was always our goal to have a number one super welcoming environment that felt different. And in the case of the RTIA show it was all about Reno, Tahoe, and how can we best show off what we've got going on here. So the Burning Man aspect and some of that large sculpture was a no-brainer, because it's the proximity and the timing and just the amount of work that's created here to be brought out to the desert, and most of it comes back here. That was an essential aspect to be able to present who we are as a region. And then some of the other elements, I think, naturally came into the picture to create the sort of energy we were looking for, like big focus on the First Nations feature. We wanted to have studios and independents welcomed and encouraged to participate alongside the galleries. Furniture, so much incredible furniture is made in the region, so with that seemed to come naturally as well. Also, my dad and partner's background is in big exhibitions, and one of the most recent shows that he did was called ICFF out of New York City, and that was primarily furniture and design and lighting. And that piece of the art world, functional art, has always kind of held an important place in his heart, and mine too, because I think that it's a natural extension of what we have going on in the walls. And I think all the other entertainment factors, we talked about this ahead of time, but it's like there is a fine line between becoming a spectator event and drawing people in with other entertainment that's outside of the norm. But it's also, when you say art, that includes music, that includes theater and dance. And so much for us personally and with this show has been connected to what we want to celebrate. So last year was the first time we really dove into the dance and the theater elements, and a lot of that has to do with our partnership with UNR and wanting to bring attention to all of their fantastic departments, the Bass department, the Bass history here. So creating a super dynamic event where you could spend all day one day and come again the next day and have a totally different experience. That was the goal. And I think that what we've learned from that experience is some things work, most things work. It's just about being able to engage people while they're there. So sometimes, having people, because we've had the Coeur d'Alene International Film Festival do a short film programming every year, and the short films are incredible. The lineup of the cinematography and it's award-winning films across the board, but it's very hard to get people to believe what they're doing, to sit in a seat and watch the films. But we still want to have that as part of the show, because it's its own art form, and it's also a testament to what's happening here in Reno. Coeur d'Alene is well on its way to becoming an Oscar qualifying event, which is huge, and it would be a game changer for Reno. So what now is just about how do we get all these pieces to come together in a way that people are going to enjoy them. And a lot of it is just shifting around and trying new things. But I think this is a really roundabout way to answer your question, that we think that all these things are essential to creating a dynamic event that people will want to keep coming back to. Because in so many of these other longstanding fairs, you go once and you either fit in or you don't. And if you don't, then you'll never want to come back. So that, I think that's what we want to be able to capture, people that don't necessarily intend on staying for more than a few minutes with their wives or whatever they're doing.
Excellent. Hey, thanks so much. That's great.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I see another question in the Q&A. Tamika asks, what steps are recommended for artists to volunteer assisting with the logistic of these local art fairs?
So this is a question about coming on as a staff member?
As a volunteer.
As a volunteer. We have a call for volunteers that we do right ahead of the show, and there's a ton that goes into the setup. Just looking at this picture here, all these walls come in on a truck, and they've got to be connected together, lifted up, paint. All the seams are taped, every single one, and they're all painted. And then yeah, it's just a whole lot. So the more volunteers and participation we can get from the community, it obviously is the more appreciated. So if you tune into our e-newsletter, there's a subscription through our website. I always put it on e-blasts, and then also our social media. So on Instagram, we're RTIA Show, and we will put it out there as well. And it's just reaching out to us and getting involved that way. And it's really me. So reach out to me and I'll get you in.
Awesome. And if you go on the website, it should prompt you to sign up for the newsletter. So I will drop a link in the chat. Okay, here we go. And I have a question for you, Briana. Oh, my camera's on. So I saw that you have a background working with a design firm. Is that correct? And I'm very curious because I'm working obviously in the public arts administration realm. I'm a practicing artist, but I don't really have like a good understanding of like how design firms utilize shows like these to like get in touch with new artists or add to their portfolio for the clients. Can you just share a little bit about that process?
Sure. I just want to also preface this by saying I'm not a designer. I was the writer and marketer for Tihany Design. It was an excellent experience, and actually most of those designers did attend every year ICFF, the fair my dad had run with all the furniture. And there was a big art component there too. And it's a two-pronged effort when designers and architects attend fairs like this. Yes, it's one, to see what kind of art is being shown. Every year is different. Artists create new things every single year, and I think you can kind of deduce as an attendee what general themes are. And so these are kind of ideas that help them to present for proposals, to present to current clients, whether it be a public project or a residential project. The residential project is different. Typically, they'll come in with the client. because it's for their home, or second home, or they'll understand what the general view is, and then they'll suggest artists and pieces in a portfolio to the clients. For public projects, hospitality specifically, much of the art is suggested, or the concept of the art is suggested in advance, and then the actual art is plugged in at the very last stage of these projects. So to be aware of and to have tabs on artists and galleries ahead of time does create this portfolio that they're able to plug in. For example, we worked on mostly hotels and cruise ships and at Tihany Design, and a lot of times the art, they would work with an art consultant too. So sometimes the bigger firms will send their art consultant to an event like this, or they'll go with the designer and just say, you know, this is kind of the direction we're trying to go. And it's a great space to have inspiration, because otherwise it's a plug and play where they're pulling from other projects or other artists that they've used. So in this case, it keeps that whole group of professionals top a trend, and they can communicate in a way that makes sense to all kinds of clients. So I don't know if that truly answered your question, but I think that it's really about portfolio building for the most part, unless they have a project that's looking for something specific and they bring in their client with them.
Awesome, thank you. All right, we got a couple of questions from Del Grita. I hope I pronounced your name right. No, I apologize if I didn't. What percentage of participating artists in this art fair comes from communities of color? What does outreach look like to highlight artists' participation? And I think that's very similar to the next answer, artists participating from POC communities.
We do not actively categorize our exhibitors to know what percentage of certain groups are exhibiting. That said, I do think that it really comes to awareness of the fair. So the first year that we had the fair, it was really artists that we already knew that were positioned in the Reno Fine Arts Collective, as far as regional artists, independents who were involved. So it's pulling from a very specific area and very specific kinds of people that were already aware of what we were doing. But as that awareness has expanded, certainly that's changed the look and feel of our participants. And as far as curating the show and placing people in booths, for us, we look at the art, and it's not necessarily trying to place certain people in certain positions to fill a percentage. So I don't know if that answers the question either, but we try as much as we can to incorporate all, especially the local organizations between Reno and Tahoe and the surrounding regions, to be able to send the message to all of their participants. The schools, UNR, Truckee Meadows Community College are all involved in that way as well. And that definitely diversifies the participants. And as we go out to new art fairs, we're always, soliciting and trying to pull in a new audience. And our various features pull in different audiences too. I mean, we've, between the First Nations, this year we're doing a big Western feature. We've done, we're having a big Vietnam feature this year. We haven't really talked about that one yet, it's under development, but there's a lot of these in Basque also. So it's like we have features that will then draw in a more diverse audience as well. And, the more we can do to make the show more interesting with the different kinds of exhibiting artists and galleries and art, better for us, because that's just going to draw in different and more extensive attendees.
Great, thank you. All right, the next question. What would you say is the average sales price expected for original paintings?
That is such a loaded question. I it totally depends on the size of the piece, what kind of original painting we're talking about, what the experience level is of the artist who's created it. There's, as far as the RTIA show and local art or independent artists showing work, the most common sales range is between $500 and $15,000 per piece of art. So that's a comfortable range for people who are actively buying our art and there to come away with something. As far as pricing your work, artists will use different techniques, and I think that it really depends on the person and the type of art and the size again. So sometimes it's pricing per inch. Sometimes it's as simple as how much time it took and charging per hour, and or then adding to or how you maybe have a base price, and then if the piece has a certain value to you, add to that. But it's a totally subjective pricing point. But I think that you definitely don't want to be out of range when you come to one of these events, like have these obnoxious prices or prices that are so low it doesn't make sense to be in this setting. So you definitely want to fall in within the range, but it really depends on time, size, and experience of the artist.
Great. Awesome. I know pricing is always a question that we get asked too, like how much should this painting be? Do you think it'll sell at this price? It's always a question that I think even professional artists struggle with.
Oh, totally. I think that if you could start with something simple where it's either pricing per inch, aiming to have a baseline of X dollars per size of canvas or of painting, and then building from there. So once you're able to sell at that level, then the next piece you do at that same size will increase in price. And so whether you're increasing by square inch or again by time, that has to be your own structure. But you do have to have a structure, which is a good point to make, because if you get that question from a potential buyer, like where'd you come up with this number, then you have to be able to respond in a way that makes sense to people who would be looking at your art. Not just like, okay, Joe Schmo next to me has the same size painting, so I just copied him. It has to be, it has to apply to all of your work that's on display, whatever the structure may be. And you have to be confident in how you got there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. All right. Thank you so much. I hope that answers your questions. Are there any more? I think this can be our last call. It is 1 p.m. I don't see any hand raised, and I don't see any more in the Q&A. All right. With that, thank you so much, Briana. And we look forward to the next segment of this professional development series. Please be sure to register in advance. And with that, thank you so much, everyone. I'm gonna pause recording.